All right, there we are. Hello everyone and welcome to this very special chat about the one and only Lionel Messi. I'm Semra, I'll be your host for this discussion over the next hour, and to make this the very best conversation that we possibly can, we have some very special guests indeed. We have former Barcelona player and LaLiga pundit Andrea Orlandi, as well as LaLiga experts, and none other than the only author of the authorized Lionel Messi book, Guillem Balagué. Hello to both of you. How are you doing?
All right, all right.
Well, lovely to see you both.
Great to see you.
And,
Great to see you.
You're both looking well. You're holding down quite well at home with the whole situation. Andrea, how's it going with two kids?
Well, it's going okay. Now that they're allowed out, so they have a bit of time outside of home, which is helping a lot. Which is helping me and my wife to kind of relax a little bit. But I can see that Guillem is having a good time because he's looking great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're looking very fresh. You're looking very relaxed, Guillem.
I made the terrace my office for the last 60 odd days, and inevitably just got tan as well. We're kind of
Oh, what a life. Anyway, so obviously the reason we have both of you here today is because you have a very special connection with Lionel Messi in the fact that you both know him and have had different experiences with him. So Andrea, why don't we start off with you, because you coincided with him during your time with Barca. Obviously, both of you were teenagers at the time. So tell me what you first remember about him and that first memory of meeting Messi at the time that you guys were both there.
When I first met him was the first time I trained with the first team. He was already an established first team player, and I was playing for Barcelona B. And I remember Leo being a very shy person outside of the pitch. But once we got inside, he would bite your ankles. He was not shy at all. He had a very strong character, and he showed it. When we were training. And the first time I spoke to him, I asked him to sign a shirt. I had a Leo Messi shirt, and one of my friends the shirt signed. And he didn't even look at me. He was that shy. Yeah, absolutely. He said, just leave it there, and then I'll do it, and then I'll give it back to you. So that was the first kind of interaction I had with him. But it was.
Do you wish that you kept the shirt?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't. Absolutely, that would be a good piece to have in my museum. I have all the memorabilia. But that was the first time I got to meet him. He is now very different. He was at the time. This is 2005, so he was only 17, 18 years old. And I remember him as well. Doing the coffee for Ronaldinho. That was a nice thing to see. I remember Ronaldinho asking for a coffee, and he would just stand up, walk, to the coffee machine, 2 sugars, bring the coffee back to Ronnie, and don't say a word. And no, it was great. It was great actually to witness that. And he was a really cool guy, really nice guy, and on the pitch he was unreal, being only 17.
I can imagine.
Let me tell one thing to Andrea. If he's still looking for a Messi shirt, signed shirt, I've got a couple. I also have Messi books signed by him.
Okay.
Now, my idea was to actually do an auction for the club I'm the chairman of to raise money for the club. But I'm just going to put it out there at some point. If anybody wants it, and whoever pays the most, they can take all of it, and all the proceeds will go to the football club. So we can talk later, if you want all of that. I've got it available.
Okay, Guillem.
Okay, Andrea, you and I need to fight for it.
I'll go for it.
Fantastic. So, at the time that you were there, Andrea, was there a lot of talk about him, obviously, apart from what you saw, because he was, 14 years old, 15 years old, where there's a lot of talk of, oh, look at this young starlet, this teenager who's coming through the ranks, that one day he's going to be something big? Was there already that vibe, that feeling at the time?
Yeah, everyone was talking about him, this little kid that could do magic with the ball, and, very shy. The talking point was how shy he was. But then on the pitch, he was just fantastic. And I remember talking to Victor Valdés, that is someone that I really trusted, the way he could spot talent, or he could see, good players. And he said to me, he's going to be the guy. He's going to be number one. And listen, when I was there, I could see he was special. But because we were all very, like, Ronaldinho just prone, because Ronaldinho was the big star. I couldn't see Messi becoming, the biggest player in football's history. I could see he was miles better than anybody else. But Victor said, hey, trust me, he's going to be the one. So yes, from a very, the early stages of his career, there was people talking about him. Not my agent at the time. I remember I had an agent and I asked him about Messi because I got a video of him doing all sorts of stuff with the under-18s of Barcelona. And my agent at the time said, no, as we say here in Spain, It's only smoke. Trust me, it's not going to be anything. And I'm, looking back at the video, I'm not sure what you're saying. Obviously, after a year, I changed my agent because it was just something else. And yeah, everyone was talking about him. Absolutely.
Well, you made the right call, it sounds like, Andrea. But Guillem, what about for you? You've obviously met Messi several times in the making of this very special and unique book, and we'll get to that. But before we talk more about what the book actually entails, I would love to hear what your first encounter was, or at least the first memory that you have of coming in contact with Messi.
I think by the time he got to the first team, we've all heard one or two stories about Messi. I think it was the year before that, before his debut with the first team, he'd actually had gone through 5 teams in the same season. Had played up till the B side, I think, because he was so good, they would just keep pushing him to the next level. And I know that on that first training session, it was Ronaldinho who said, Ronaldinho, as Andrea said already, or at that time, the best player in the world. He said he's going to be the best player in the world. What kind of baptism you get? And he told that, I know, to 2 people, one of which was a friend of mine, who she doesn't keep things for herself. So many other people that Ronaldinho had said that. Obviously, that sharpened everybody's instinct, and we started looking much closer into what that story was and who was Messi. Then every time he was on a pitch, and there was that famous game against Juventus in the Gamper Trophy in the summer with Capello on the other side, and Rijkaard, of course, the manager of Barcelona, where Capello, halfway through the game, went close to Rijkaard and said, "Can I have him alone?" And Rijkaard said, "No way." Stories again that eventually appeared in the press, but there was that talk amongst ourselves in the media that yes, something special was definitely happening. And after that, it was just he started being put in front of the media very, very sparsely at the beginning because he was so shy, wasn't comfortable at all talking with the media. So I get to do an interview with him maybe once or twice a year for Sky Sports at the time. I look at it now and I'm thinking, he must have been 19, 20, and I had 45 minutes with him, out of which we will use 3 minutes, because that's what you will do. You actually travel to Spain, do an interview, that's all you did, be with Messi for 45 minutes, come back, and then you go to the producer, good interview, this guy who's very good. All right, 3 minutes of it. So there's a lot of stuff that he has said through the years that hasn't made it into the television. But as I said, and at that point, we were already talking to him as a big promise. And there was this argument I had with the presenter of Revista de la Liga at the time, Mark Bolton. I said live, I jumped the gun a little bit and said, he's going to be the best player in 3 years. He was 18, 19 at the time. He was like, no way. And sometimes you think, I hope that he makes it there because he's going to hound me forever. And a year, 2 years later, we were talking like him about him in that kind of way.
So Andrea, whenever he was making that progress, and you saw that progress that he was making, I mean, what was the feeling like? I guess internally as well, in terms of the progression that he was making, what they thought he could become, if they thought he would become kind of the leader that would overtake Ronaldinho, as both of you already alluded to as well. And do you have any other nice anecdotes of the two of you? You guys train together, obviously, as well too. So
yeah, we train quite a lot together because Rijkaard was the manager at the time. Rijkaard knows of my Italian background. Obviously, he spoke Italian, and he kind of liked me. And every time there was a spot there to be filled, I was the one just being called up from the second team to train with them. And yes, I have another good anecdote when Messi was not the Messi that we all know now, but he was already Lionel Messi playing with Barca. And as I was driving down to the Camp Nou, I just saw him. He was waiting. He was living close to the stadium, and he was waiting downstairs to be picked up to go to training. So he had his boot bag there. He had his wash bag as well. So I just went, Leo, do you need a ride? No, don't worry. They're gonna pick me up now. And I said, okay. So he was there sitting down there. So there was people walking past him, and he was already, a star, because obviously to play for Barca in the first team. And he was that shy and humble to just be waiting there downstairs like a little kid to get picked and go to the training ground. But listen, I think that the way he progressed and he developed, I think that Rijkaard was important because yes, that Gamper is when everyone raised their eyebrows saying, "Wow, what a player we've got with Capello wanting him on loan." But we had the same with Giovanni Dos Santos a few years later when he had a great Gamper against Inter Milan, scored, and he's the new Ronaldinho, and the pressure was on him, and he didn't respond to that pressure. So Rijkaard used him really well. You had Ludovic Joly was the right winger for Barcelona. He was the one playing, and then Messi, started slowly to get his place into the team. I remember that season when he didn't feature in the Champions League final, and he got really angry because he's a winner. So he didn't celebrate after, it was the first Champions League after a long time for Barca. But that showed, the character, and that's what it's actually taken him that far, being the best player in football's history. And I think that the way Rijkaard used him, knowing that he had a gem, he had something different in his hands, it was very important for him to develop and ended up being the best player in the world.
In fact, what was fascinating is that Ronaldinho having recognized the talent that they had, and players like to have those kind of players that can help you win close up, very, very close. And Ronaldinho just put him under his wings from the beginning. There is 2 or 3 rondos sometimes in training at the beginning of training. There's the rondos of the Brazilians, the Spanish guys, and there is the other rondo where, in fact, Messi would have been. If it's 2 or 3 rondos, he would have been on the second or the third one. But instead, Ronaldinho put him into the rondo of the Brazilians straight away. He became very close to Deco, to Mota, and he picked from them what he meant to be a professional, because he hadn't been. He'd just been pushed into the first team when he still was 17, 18. And he learned things, the fact that you have to be very committed, the level of training was important, and of course, he picked the bad things as well. A little bit of, at that time, it was the end of an era. It became very, very clear in the last 2 years of Rijkaard in charge, and with that the team was lacking in discipline. And then at that point, what was important was the presence of his dad. And it made me, you were telling Andrea the story of him waiting to be picked up. He got to a point where actually he drove his own car, after he was 18, of course, and his dad will be in training, and instead of being his dad picking him up, he will actually take his dad to the apartment that they shared outside the Camp Nou. And in one of those occasions, the first one to come out of the parking lot was Ronaldinho, and he drove fast in that area where fans were asking for autographs. Behind it was Messi driving his dad, and did exactly the same, driving fast past of the fans. And his dad said, "Do you know that roundabout just there? You're going to go back exactly where you were, and you're going to stop where the fans are, and you're going to sign every single thing they ask you to sign. And if you're going to learn something today, is that these are guys that will be with you, that will help you, and that you have to respect." So he was in 2 minds. Ronaldinho was showing him another way of being a professional. I think his dad was pointing out to the right direction a lot of the times too.
That makes me laugh. That makes me laugh, that thing of the fans getting into the Camp Nou, because I remember myself driving, and obviously fans were expecting to see someone important, and as soon as they saw me,
Come on, Andrea.
No, you could see the reaction. That was funny, and I used to laugh because the fans were, he's only a second team player. So I was, and the thing is, you had to do a U-turn to go down, and the first 5 times that I tried to do that, I had to reverse because I wasn't able to do that U-turn. I was that nervous, with the fans looking at me. So and now I thought about it, and it makes me laugh.
That's a good story. So going back to what you were saying about Rijkaard, both of you obviously talking about him and how it coincided with the end of Rijkaard's time on the touchline as manager of Barcelona, with Messi's career basically taking off. In a parallel universe, how do you think that Rijkaard would have been able to develop Messi even more, considering, you know, Andrea, you mentioned that he knew he had a gem in the Argentine. So what do you think maybe would have happened? Would we have seen a very different story to what actually played out with Guardiola?
Well, maybe Rijkaard was someone that, you know, he gave the players lots of responsibility. So it's up to you to go out there and deliver. And there was a time where they did so. And as Guillem said, there was a time when Ronaldinho started to go a little bit downhill. His performances weren't as good. In the dressing room, there were groups, not only the rondos, but in the dressing room as well. It was the same scenario. And obviously, maybe he needed to be pushed to excel, you know, to become the best player in the world. So Rijkaard for me was very important in the early stages, because Rijkaard was more like a dad for every single player in that dressing room. He had the respect of everyone, and he was the one to give you a hug when you needed to. And I thought it was very important for Leo. But then when Guardiola took over, it was more like, okay, now I'm gonna make you the best player in the world. And that's what happened. So I think that both were crucial. I don't know if with Rijkaard we would have seen the best Messi, but we did see, you know, some spectacular games and great performances with him. I remember a hat-trick in a Clásico. You know, loads of different performances and great performances. But I think that when we saw the special Leo Messi, the best player in football's history, was when Guardiola took over and actually asked him a little bit more, got something more out of him if it was possible.
Well, created that false nine, or revolutionized the false nine role that had already existed from, I think, the 1930s or something like that. He modernized that role for him specifically. But Guillem, sorry, I know you wanted to say something.
No, I was going to say Messi is the perfect storm. In a way, you need, as I explored in the biography that I did with him, you need 11 things to be Messi. And there are no more Messis, or no more Cristiano Ronaldos, because you cannot get those things together at the same time. For instance, his parents were at some point considering the idea of going to Australia to live, because Argentina was struggling at the beginning of the 21st century, and they did seriously think of something that a lot of Argentinians were doing at the time. Would he have been the Messi that we know if he was born in Sydney? Okay, well, no, he wasn't born in Sydney. He actually was born in Rosario, and then made it to Barcelona. A club has got, at the time, one of the most serious academies in the world, who also respected his way of playing. He had Rijkaard, who was like a father figure to him, and he got to a point where Rijkaard had to go, and Pep Guardiola pushed him and mold him a little bit, or at least mold the team, and we can talk more on this later, mold the team to fit him. Well, without Pep Guardiola, perhaps without the looking after of Rijkaard, maybe we wouldn't have seen the Messi that we saw. But it became very clear, as Andrea said, that there was a point where Rijkaard could not continue. He couldn't manage the changing room, and it was a time of change. Laporta was the manager. Laporta decided in a drunken conversation dinner with Pep Guardiola, where a lot of wine was had, but the idea of saying, would you take the job next season? That was Laporta asking Pep Guardiola. And Guardiola answered, you won't have the, what's the word? A nice word for it. Have the balls.
Oh, there you go.
Anyway, the job was given. And at that point, with that transition, there was another transition to be made, which was the Ronaldinho era was finishing. The Messi era had to start. And there was a wonderful story of how Laporta himself went to Ronaldinho's house in the coast south of Barcelona, and went to what he describes as a very big house with a lot of echo, where Ronaldinho was on his own, as he had been the few last months before he left Barcelona, and he told him, look, I'm going to leave. Sorry, he told him, you have to leave, Ronaldinho. That's what the chairman said to Ronaldinho. There was a lot of tears, Laporta says, there was a lot of hugs, but I think Ronaldinho understood it. In fact, a few weeks earlier, it was Ronaldinho who had told Messi, I think this is it for me, and I want you to take number 10. This was told by a very emotional Messi to me about months ago, before the pandemic, for the Ronaldinho movie that's been prepared. I interviewed Leo, and he was almost like breaking down, thinking, yeah. And he came to me and said, you should have the number 10. And I was saying, Leo said, no, number 10 is yours. No, you cannot go. Because it was not only his dad, Rijkaard, but his older brother, Ronaldinho, who was leaving at the same time.
Right.
So Laporta goes and says goodbye to Ronaldinho, comes out of Ronaldinho's house, rings Messi's dad. They were neighbors, Ronaldinho and the Messis. And he says, are you all at home? Yes, Jorge Messi says. So Laporta went to Messi's house and said, look, basically Pep Guardiola is going to be the new manager, and we want you, even though you're 21, to be the leader of this group. You're going to be the one that we're going to build this team for. Interestingly, the reaction from Leo, not only then, but also in the first pre-season of Pep Guardiola, was of the rejection. He felt rejected because his friends, his adopted family, if you like, had gone. But also, who is this bald guy that comes in just giving us instructions? And there was a couple of clashes between Pep Guardiola and Leo Messi at the beginning of that pre-season. And then, as we know, things got better after that.
They certainly did, didn't they? Guardiola comes in, he creates this unstoppable force that ends up tearing up Spanish football and European competition as well over the course of the next decade and so on. But do you think that without the influence of Guardiola, without the players and the team that he grew up with, if those people like Xavi and Iniesta, if they weren't there with him, do you think that we would have still gotten the similar Messi that we had now? Or do you think that it would have been a very different story as well? I mean, kind of something maybe we could even compare to, I don't know if you guys saw The Last Dance, kind of obsessed with it, but the whole Michael Jordan being the best basketball player of all time, but also in part because it really had to do with the supporting players around him as well that made him and elevated him into the icon that he is. So do you think that there's similar parallels we could draw with Lionel Messi in that case? Well,
talking about The Last Dance, I think it's Dennis Rodman saying, would have they won the title without me, without Scottie Pippen? No. So it's the same with Leo, and you see that when he goes and plays for Argentina, the results they get, or how frustrated he can be because he doesn't have the Xavi, Iniestas, or those type of players around him, to feed him the ball in the right areas at the right time. So obviously, the players he's had around, not only on the pitch but off the pitch, because you talk about Xavi, Iniestas. Xavi was, we said Rijkaard was a father figure, Ronaldinho like a brother, where Xavi was a silent leader, leading by example, and he was very respected, and he's someone that Messi looks up to, and he respected him. And there's not many players that I think that actually Messi can respect because of how good he is, and Xavi was one of those, as well as Iniesta, because he made it through the youth ranks of Barcelona. He knows what it means, he knows how good they are, and he knows that they made him a better player. Of course, the team you play with can make you a lot better or a lot worse. And I think that without them, it would have been a different story. It would still be the best player in the world, but obviously maybe he wouldn't have won the same titles, or he wouldn't have scored the goals he scored, even though 70% of those he just produced them, on his own. He doesn't need anyone else. Just get out of the way. It's like Jordan. Get out of the way. I'll do the rest.
Yeah. He just drops back, picks up the ball at the halfway line and carries it forward on his own. And just dribbles past 3 or 4 defenders.
Exactly. But for example, now in the current Barcelona team, for example, we see a Messi dropping down and getting on the ball in very deep areas, and we've seen him not scoring probably since Setien took over the same number of goals he used to. So we go back to the same discussion. Does he have the players around now to be as productive as he was? Well, maybe I'm not sure, but obviously Iniesta, Xavi, and all those type of players were very important to make Messi the greatest player ever.
There's two things. There's two questions really that you ask. One is, would he have won as many titles without them players? And the answer is clear: no chance. Yeah. Would he have been the best player in the world? In my eyes, no discussion. He would have been. For me, Messi's a rock falling down the mountain. It doesn't matter. How many obstacles he finds, he will just go down and he will do whatever he is able to do. And before we could enter this discussion of if he had made it the best. But one thing you have to consider, of course, is that if he hadn't been at Barcelona, Juventus wanted him. Inter wanted him. Real Madrid tried to get him 3 times. So he would have been in one of the best teams in the world. Perhaps if he was at Real Madrid, he would still be surrounded by very good players, but he would have used his talents in a different way. Whatever, he would have adapted. The same if he had been in Italy, maybe he would have adapted in a different way. But I've got no doubt in my mind that wherever he would have been, he would have made that team the best in the world.
Okay, now before we go on to talk more about what Messi has done in his career and what lies ahead for him in the future, I want to go back to your book for a minute, Guillem, because I have a 2-part question actually for you. The first of which is how you managed to convince him to be able to do the only authorized biography to date out of everybody in the world, because everybody wants a piece of Messi. Everybody wants to be able to do that and to be able to write about him and with him. And if those interviews that you did while you were with Sky flying over to Spain when he was young, if that had anything to do with it. And also the story behind the book in terms of why you decided to write it the way that you did, because it's a look of Messi the person more than it is Messi the player on the pitch, right? I mean, you start off the book more about his upbringing in Argentina and what he was like as a child growing up in Argentina, and then how he changed and evolved whenever he landed in Barcelona from 14 onwards, right? So it's really the evolution of the human that is Lionel Messi.
I will tell you, you cannot separate the person to the player. And the family is important. The background, family background, the club he's in, all that is important. So I needed to find out about all of that to tell the Messi story. But it all starts with my previous book. So I did a book with Pep Guardiola called Another Way of Winning. And once you've explored Pep in the 4 years that he was at Barcelona, you got so many questions about Messi, because we tend to call it the Pep team. Pep doesn't like that. He prefers to call it the Messi team. Okay, if he was Messi, could I find out some more about Leo and how he related to the players? Who is this guy? Where did he come from? So I went to the family and I said, look, I've got the possibility. My publishers in England, Orion, have asked me to do another book, and it has to be Leo. It has to be him. He was already best player in the world, winning all these Ballon d'Ors. And I said, yeah, in Argentina and Spain, he's very well known. Internationally, people know 2 things about him: that he's very good and that he injected when he was a kid. We can explain detail later. And they said, sorry, this was his dad and his brother, sorry, but we don't do books with anybody. We don't trust anybody. Every book that's come out is full of lies. And sorry, the answer is no. And I'm like, oh, wait. And to tell those stories, every opportunity I saw in that conversation was to say, but you're saying the lies. Well, let's explain the real story. No, we're not interested. Well, we'll give you a call in a couple of weeks. And that was, for me, a killer, because already the book I had done on Liverpool, it was done with everybody at Liverpool. The one with Pep Guardiola was with Pep and the players and etc. So it had to be that kind of book with Leo. Because, yes, there were already 3-4 books out there that hadn't been done with the family, with the permission, or working with them. 2 weeks later, I got a call from his dad saying, look, we've been thinking. We thought that in Spain and in Argentina, everybody knows Leo. But internationally, they only know 2 things: that he injects hormones. So he basically repeated word by word what I had said. And I said, what a great point you're making there. And he said, well, actually, if you want, start the process, research, investigate, come back to us when you talk to somebody, because we'll tell you, careful with this guy, because he tells a story that's not true. Because a lot of people are Messi's dads, and a lot of people explain the success of Messi through their relationship with him. In some cases, believe me or not, it was not true. They did not have any relationship. I met one guy in particular for a documentary I did going to Rosario that told me a story that was completely false.
It's amazing how some people have the confidence and the balls, as you say, Guillem, to actually tell these stories with
check.
as if it actually happened. It's amazing.
Who's going to check? Well, I was going to check. So I'm a party pooper that way. But so I started researching, traveling, talking in Argentina and Rosario and Buenos Aires and all that. And the job was becoming bigger and bigger because I wanted to know everything. And I wanted to know what makes a Messi. I wanted to know the physicality of Messi. Why is he so good from a physical point of view? Sociology behind it, etc. And innocently, very naively, I sent a part of the book to Messi's dad, one that I was very proud with. I said, if you want, have a look, read it, and come back. And he came back with a couple of annotations. So I sent another bit, and then another bit. And then I destroyed the whole of his summer because I was sending stuff, which he then sent all the stuff back. And eventually it became a 650-page book that I couldn't edit because I was on such a deadline, as in I couldn't edit down. But I was so happy with it that I thought, come on, let's go for it. And having seen what the work that was in it, so many talks to so many sociologists, psychologists, people that it was involved with, teachers, coaches, family members, etc., that his dad said, look, if you want, you can call it the authorized book if you want. So then we know that what's in here is true. So
it's legitimate compared to everybody else.
And it came out in 2012-13, I think, and it's had so many versions. The last one I've got here, this is not improvised, of course, but this is the last version, which is edited down and put up to date until the World Cup, Russia World Cup. And I've got they're all happy with it. I'm happy with it. It's been translated to 17 languages, and very, very proud of that piece of work.
Well, you should be. I mean, it's remarkable what you were able to achieve and putting that together, and the fact that you were able to get his family and his father and everybody on board to say, go ahead and call it the authorized, version of telling, Messi's story. It really is something to be proud of. Now, both of you have already talked about, and I think, Guillem, also in your book, you cover this, about how shy and introverted and quiet he was, something that all of us know quite well. But this season in particular, we've really started to see him break out of that shell, and we're seeing a whole new version of Messi as a leader and a captain, speaking out more to the media, also voicing his opinions and his thoughts on social media as well. Andrea, does it surprise you at all that we've seen this change in his behavior, especially what you knew of him?
Well, yes, because I knew of him, but because I know as well, his importance in the dressing room, I'm not that surprised. I mean, I think that it was a matter of time before we saw that Messi just coming out and say what he thinks and being the leader, the leading voice. Sometimes using the social media even against the club, because obviously he's earned the right to do so. I mean, he's been performing consistently every single season for the last 15 years like the best player, and I think that he thinks he's entitled to sometimes express his opinions, even if it is against FC Barcelona.
Sure.
I think that he's actually enjoying this part as well. This side of him that it was hidden somewhere. He hadn't used it for a long time. Guillem knows because he's been able to interview him and how difficult it was at the beginning to get some words out of his mouth. But now, I don't know if he's worked on it. He might have done it but when he goes out and speaks in front of 100,000 at the Camp Nou, in the team's presentation or in the press conferences, he's very, sure of what he's going to say. He's confident, and I think the message he wants to give is given, and he does it right. So I think that now he's not only a leader on the pitch, he wants to raise his voice and show as well, using that he's the main man of Barcelona. And sometimes he kind of remember, the owners and the guys in charge who's actually in charge.
Yeah, no question. So I think all of us know very well everything that he has achieved. So I'd love for us to hypothesize a little bit about what we can maybe see or expect to see from him in the remaining years of his career before that dreaded R word that he himself has brought up at the Ballon d'Or ceremony, picking up his 6th Ballon d'Or. So how many years, first of all, do you think we still have left to watch and to enjoy and to witness the brilliance of Messi before he inevitably has to hang up those boots, barring the fact that he doesn't pick up any injuries? If he stays fully fit, how much longer do you think, that we'll be able to see him dazzle us on the pitch?
Qatar is the limit, I think. He's already taken it year by year. Perhaps at some point he thought that the year before Qatar, or the half a year now, from the summer until Qatar, it would have been a good idea to do that dream that he had of joining Newell's Old Boys in the first division in Argentina. It's a big thing in Argentina to actually make it into the first division before you go abroad, to actually show the fans that you can make it in Argentina. For a while, because he didn't, because he left when he was 12, it was held against him. I think to not so much to quiet that down, but to actually fulfill the dream of playing for Newell's Old Boys, which is the team he supports, and where he played, he kind of harbored that idea of going back and playing. But I think the situation in Argentina, the fact that now he's a dad, they are so comfortable in their own little world that they created, where they live. I think that's out of the window right now. So I'm thinking a couple of years at Barcelona, or 2 years and a half, and then Qatar World Cup, perhaps finish the season, whatever that season gets finished, and then we will see. But I'm starting to think that we're very, very close then to the end. He didn't mean when he talked about in that Ballon d'Or saying about retirement. He wasn't really talking or thinking about retirement. It was part of a question that was put to him. He didn't want to think of it as I am preparing for it, but.
Sure, but it was the first time that he publicly really kind of warmed to the idea of at least talking about it. Yeah. I don't remember any other time where he actually talked about the idea of retirement coming so soon. But
because I think he's aware that it's happening, he's had to drop in the pitch, because the energies that he's got and the pace that he's got allows him to do more things from a deeper part of the pitch, even though he's still scoring the same amount of goals. I think he was trying to convince Neymar to come back last summer with the idea of, look, come, I'm 2 years, 3 years maximum here, then you'll be the boss. That was part of the argument. You didn't need much to convince Neymar to come back to Barcelona anyway. But that was the thing. If you left because you wanted to be the number one, well, 2 or 3 years of me here, and then this place will be yours. Barcelona then didn't approach the whole thing properly, and it didn't happen. But yes, this was last summer, and he was talking 2 or 3 years at the time. So I think about Qatar is where we have to prepare ourselves for that.
Well,
the last dance. Football terms.
Well, hopefully not. Guillem said something about playing deeper, and I think that with Messi, because I don't think, yes, of course, he's used his speed, especially in the first, in the first meters when he can get past players very easily with his technique and speed and pace. But he's very clever. I mean, his brain, he thinks ahead of every single player in the world. He's very intelligent on the pitch, so that tells me that he can play a little bit deeper. And maybe in the hole, and where he doesn't have, I'm not going to say this, how am I going to say it? He doesn't run a lot, Messi, let's say this. So he can actually run even less.
He's very intelligent about when he wants to make his runs and how long he wants to.
He times his runs perfectly. I remember there was a Clásico where he won the Clásico and he actually made 2 sprints. And one of those sprints was the winner. He knows when to do it, and obviously he will do it at the right time. But with this, I want to say that maybe physically he can actually last longer. It's more like mentally. I mean, to be the best and having to prove you are the best every single week. And I wouldn't be able to do so. I mean, how strong these people are mentally. I think that there will be one day where he'll get tired of it and think, well, maybe Argentina, or maybe just retire, because he's done everything, And obviously, we all want to be, this day as far as possible. Guillem said Qatar, hopefully a little bit longer than that. But, from a footballing point of view, I think that he can play in different positions, and he can actually, develop into a different player and keep playing for a longer time, hopefully.
I wonder.
That actually brings me to my next. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I wonder, and Andrea can help us here because he's the player who retired at some point, and I wonder if I'm now researching for a book about Maradona, and I realized that when he got to 29, 30, the way to survive, to keep playing, was to have little projects. he comes to Sevilla in 92, for instance. He was already 32, 33. Comes to Sevilla and thinks, right, in January, we meet in Real Madrid. So he arrives about September, October, and he prepares himself for the game. After that, he's so motivated. And I just wonder if perhaps that's what you do just before you retire and can stay a little bit longer playing by finding little reasons to keep going, which will take him beyond Qatar. Did you do that, Andrea?
Well, obviously, yeah, because you can actually make plans for a long time, because you know you're getting closer to the time you're gonna have to hang your boots. So you can't do that. You can't predict when it's gonna be, but obviously the plans have to be short. So I'm sure that if Maradona did that, I'm sure that Messi is thinking about winning a World Cup with Argentina. So when you said Qatar, it's actually spot on, because I'm sure that in his head he wants to win something with Argentina, obviously ending this debate about who is the best, him or Maradona, because he didn't win with a World Cup with Argentina. But yes, you are setting your goals, and probably thinking, well, this is my next goal, let's go for it. Once you achieve it, you set another one and go forward. Absolutely, 100%. And this is why what you said before about bringing Neymar. Let's bring Neymar. Let's enjoy together for a couple of years, and then, as Ronaldinho did with me, I'll leave the number 10 shirt for him, and he can be the best player now. Listen, when these type of players retire, I always tend to be really sad. And I remember when Zidane retired, Francesco Totti, who was my childhood hero, retired. Ronaldo, fenomeno. So I don't wanna think about it, to be honest.
Okay, well, the good news is that we still have him at least for a few more years. But do you think, apart from those projects, things like looking ahead to the World Cup or maybe beating Real Madrid, as is the case in the Clásico for Barcelona, do you think that there could also be smaller objectives, maybe in terms of trying to perfect his game as much as possible before he leaves? Because we've seen him actually improve certain areas that were, let's say, weak. And I say weak, in inverted commas, because it's still better than almost everybody else on the pitch. But we see him at the top of the goal-scoring charts. We see him at the top of the assisting charts. We see him improving his penalty taking. He's the best free kick scorer as well, scorer from free kicks as well. I mean, he seems to be becoming the best in every single category that there is. Is there still any room left for improvement, though, in any part of his game, or has he pretty much mastered it all by this point?
I mean, there's room for improvement in Lionel Messi. That's a big statement. But I think that he's actually been working on his weaknesses. You mentioned the free kicks. He had the maestro there was Ronaldinho, and I remember being there, Ronaldinho after training, taking practice. We had Jorquera was the second goalkeeper. And the guy was just tired of seeing the ball just getting into the top corner. So after every session, there was Ronaldinho just taking free kicks. And probably Messi thought, I have to do the same to be the best free kick taker. Because if you remember, when he first started, he didn't have that ratio of goals per free kick taken. So he did that. He mastered that. Now he's more like focused on giving assists. I think that he's been giving more assists than scoring goals. I think that obviously there's not much room for improvement. I think that he's actually excelled in a game of football. I'm not sure we're gonna see a player like him ever again, and we have to realize that and obviously know that we've been very lucky to live in the Messi era, Messi and Cristiano. And I think that Cristiano leaving hasn't helped him because we're talking about setting goals, and probably Messi looking at Cristiano scoring a hat-trick, he would think, well, now I'm going to score 4. So this is kind of them pushing each other to be the best. And I'm sure that when Cristiano left, Messi wasn't happy because he thought, now who am I going to fight against? Who am I going to compare myself against? Because there's no players like him. But obviously, it's difficult for me, Semra, to say, okay, he needs to improve his right foot. Let's say this. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe he's going to take free kicks with his right foot from now on until the end of his career.
Just for fun.
Just for fun, exactly.
So Guillem, Andrea already mentioned that he feels that there's never going to be another Messi, that it can never be replicated. But we have seen, people like Pelé, we never thought there would be another Pelé, or we never thought there would be another Johan Cruyff, or we never thought there'd be another Maradona. But do you think there's any reason to think that it's possibly feasible that there will be somebody who comes along that is similar to these legendary players and will say this is the greatest of all time, and again, nobody can surpass this legend and his greatness?
There will be somebody that will become the best player in the world, of course, and that will probably next be Mbappe, no doubt about it. But to reach not only everything we described in terms of success with free kicks and goals and titles, but to actually appear in the most important games so often. I've been checking the stats, and nobody scored so many goals in finals in the whole of his career. In every final he's been involved in, nobody has had that kind of influence. It'll be very difficult. So in the conversation about the best ever, well, who we've got Pelé, we've got Maradona, we've got Messi, and that's about it. To get somebody like that, I'm not sure we're going to be lucky enough to see somebody reaching those heights. But again, we have been enjoying them very, very up close. Pelé's the generation that had Pelé playing, they hardly saw him. The one that had Maradona a little bit more, but in Spain we wouldn't watch the Serie A, for instance, at the time when he was at Napoli. So now we've seen them every week. We see them twice a week. We see them in the same league with Cristiano Ronaldo pushing each other, which again has been something that we haven't discussed a lot, but as Andrea said, it has been absolutely important. And we just have to celebrate that and remember the funny moments that we had with him. I think at some point before we go, there's one or two anecdotes that Andrea, I'm sure, wants to mention, and one or two that I could mention as well, because we have been in the presence.
Oh, I think we lost you for a second. I didn't hear the very end of what you just said, Guillem. Sorry.
Just that we have been in the presence of somebody very special, so we kind of remember every moment and frame it in our memory as one to treasure.
Well, we'll definitely get to those anecdotes, because I, for one, am very curious, because I don't know what's coming. But, I mean, just to put some actual figures to what we're talking about here, I looked up some stats on him, and it's just mind-blowing. 34 trophies with Barcelona, 2 with Argentina, 6-time Ballon d'Or, as we all know, 6-time Golden Shoe, 2-time FIFA's Best Player, countless other individual awards. He scored 40-plus goals in 10-plus years in a row. 697 goals plus 306 assists in 865 games. That's over 1,000 goals that he's been involved with. So that's an average of 1.17 goals per game. I mean, it's absolutely monstrous in terms of the figures and what he's been able to do and the influence in terms of goal scoring and winning games and so on. But beyond that, what do you think his legacy will be whenever he does decide to walk away from the game?
Well, listen, now think about a player that comes to Barca and they tell you, now you have the number 10 shirt. That's all the best.
Do you think there's a possibility that, like we see in the NBA and other sports in the US, that they would actually retire his number, retire the number 10?
I'm not sure. I mean, it's such an iconic number, and this is Barcelona, and we'll probably look for, the biggest player on earth at the time to be the one getting that shirt. And everyone thought about Neymar. I think that Neymar has, has the personality and the quality to wear that shirt. But imagine how heavy it will be. I mean, the legacy, you just mentioned all the numbers. And I'm actually embarrassed to say that I was a footballer myself, because it's just incredible. I mean, that's why I say there won't be another player like him. I mean, because he's just beat every single record, and the legacy is gonna leave. Is a player that came from Argentina, being that small, that shy, getting through all these problems, overcoming those situations, and obviously overcoming the shyness as well. Because I've spoken to my former teammates, and in the first day he walked into the dressing room with the infantiles at Barcelona in the youth ranks. And he wouldn't say a word. He would just sit there, close to the wall, and he wouldn't talk to anyone. And everyone was like, who's this guy? He's kind of a weirdo, And then he just put his boots on, first training session. Oh, wow, okay. Now he's talking. He's different. But how difficult it must have been for him to come from Argentina and having to overcome all those things. So he's been a silent leader. He's spoken always on the pitch. And I think that this is the legacy he's going to leave. It's going to be the heaviest shirt to wear in football's history, that Barcelona number 10 shirt. So I'm just sorry for the player who's going to have to wear it after.
Yeah, if we talk about legacy, I would just say that he taught us that impossible is possible. And we have to keep that in mind in the next few years when players won't be able to score 50 goals per season. I think that somebody could. So at some point, there is hope that somebody else could come along and do that, because it has happened to as the kind of records that you show. And there's somebody, a friend of mine, who has counted his goals with Newell's and with Barcelona Youth, which means that he's had over 1,000 now, with 1,000 goals in his career. Well, it is possible. Somebody's done it. He's human, just. So another human can do it too.
Okay, well, anecdote time. So, Andrea, why don't you go first?
Well,
tell us what Guillem was saying that you need to share with us.
Guillem put pressure on me, with this anecdote thing. And no, I'll tell you one thing. We used to have practice games on Thursdays. The second team against the first team, and so there was Samuel Eto'o and Leo Messi coming back from injury, and obviously Rijkaard mixed the teams. So there was one team I was with Eto'o, so Messi was on the other side, and that was. I think it only had 2 training sessions, and that was the first game it ever played, and it was just unstoppable. I mean, we couldn't get near him, and every time I tried to get the ball from him, he would just have a touch and just go away. And I have a picture on my phone, but now I'll have to look for it, so I'll send you later, where I'm actually running behind him with my tongues out, and I'm trying to grab him, and I can't even get close to him. And it's just embarrassing, and the guy was just.
It's like Coyote and and Roadrunner,
exactly.
Right?
No, it's funny. I'll show you. And the guy was on it. I mean, he didn't need only 2 training sessions, and he was on fire. Where Samuel Eto'o, you could see, he was still struggling. It was only his 3rd training session, and he was okay, but not Messi. It was just, flying from the start. And I thought, wow, this guy, man, is not normal. He's not real.
Did you tell the story of I can't remember if you said it here or before we started when you told us about the coffee and Ronaldinho?
Yeah, well, that was very funny because Ronaldinho used to.
I love that story.
Yeah, because Ronaldinho said juvenil. Juvenil is like how you call a young player. Yeah, youngie, bring me the coffee, and the guy would just stand up, not say anything. How many sugars? I said 2 sugars. He just put 2 sugars on. And he went, how many World Cups have you played? Ronaldinho used to ask him. No, none. Okay, so now you have to bring, that's why you have to bring me the coffee. When you play the World Cup, we'll talk again. So that was.
I wonder if now Messi says to Ronaldinho.
Exactly. And I was there, and I was sitting there, like thinking, why don't you ask me, man? I just wanna do the coffee for you, Why don't you ask me? But no, it never happened. But it was great to see. It was great to see. He was just humble, just stood up, did the coffee for Ronnie. Ronnie was the main man, and have your coffee. I hope you enjoy it. It was great.
I love that. I love it. And what about you, Guillem? What are some of your stories and maybe some of the most surprising things that you discovered about Messi while you were researching for the book?
There are loads, but I remember one in particular that I started telling you before we started. He was 21, and Adidas had this brainstorming session in which they went and said, why don't we bring Messi to London? He flies.
Ah, yes.
He flies he flies into London, and then we put a helicopter, and he lands in a park where people play football. We'll have 2 teams playing. He sits on the bench and replaces one of these guys, and then they play. These guys, of course, wouldn't know that it's Messi. Then we take him away with a car, and we take him to Brick Lane Market, and then he gets behind the counter and starts selling boots to people. When he was already well known, very well known. Perhaps
this is great.
Universally the best player in the world, but he was very well known. And then they thought, and third, we got to East London, and in one of these cages where people play football, 5v5,
Yeah.
Make them play, and again, he comes in and somebody has to come off, and he plays with them. In paper, what a great plan, right? So, with Sky,
what can go wrong, right?
Nothing can go wrong. So I was with Sky at the time, and as part of the promotion, Sky got the possibility of being in the park where he was going to play the first game, with the cameras set up, and me just talking through what was going on. At the same time, even though internet wasn't a massive thing then, the Sun published a story that he was going to come to London, and that he was going to come especially to that park in London. So I start seeing people gathering around this game where a team, under 18s, Blues against Whites playing, and the kids were like, what the hell is going on here? Where's the camera here? Why is Balagué here? What's hundreds of people watching us? Anyway, eventually, this is a massive park. So eventually this helicopter lands, and everybody knew who was in that helicopter. So I thought it must have been watching the game 100, 200, and all of a sudden, I promise you, it must have been 1,000 people surrounded the helicopter. Leo Messi. The players stop playing because they don't understand what's going on. There is a fight to get Messi into the pitch to do the first part of the event. Impossible, absolutely impossible. They take him away. And the kids are still wondering, what's happened here? So I told them, and they were so disappointed, of course, even though one would have had to come off to bring Messi in, and that would have been the story of his life, of course. But anyway, it didn't happen. Then I had to rush to get to Brick Lane, and in Brick Lane, yes, he actually saw Boots. And there were a bunch of people passing by. Is he? Do you want a boot? And he said some boots.
But in English, because I've never heard him say a single word in English. So
he's been trying to learn, hasn't been very successful. But there was that moment, and then I actually got to the cage before him, and we settled ourselves in the middle of the park, stopped the guys playing. They knew what was coming, and waited for his arrival. The cage has been full of people hanging into the fences. And there are a lot of people around them, and then the streets around them full of people. And we're in the middle of it, thinking, how are we going to escape this one? Because he's not going to come in. So I make a call. Where are you? You know what? We're in a van around the corner. Not enough security. We won't come in. And I'm like, oh my God. All right, I say. Okay. All right. I said to my cameraman, we should film in the next street before he comes in. Let's go to the next street to film. And we start coming out. And, where are you going? Where is Messi? I felt from there. He already was on his way to the airport to take him away from London. And he got onto a private jet. And I was so mad that I didn't even get an interview with him, that I forced him to come out of that private jet. Imagine Leo Messi. To come out of it. Him completely pissed off because he was beyond the deadline. We asked him 5 questions, answered with like, yes, no, can I go now kind of thing. And then he headed away from London in a not very memorable day for him, but a very memorable day in the history of East London. They couldn't see much.
Oh, that is awesome. That's very good. So, I mean, we could obviously talk forever and a day about Lionel Messi, but I don't want to take up too much more of your time. So just before we leave, I want to ask you a very difficult question, or at least I think it's a difficult question anyway. If you had to describe Messi in one word, what would that word be?
Well,
I know many would probably say goat.
Goat, yeah. Well, Semra, that's difficult, eh? Guillem, go first. Go on.
He's passing the ball off to you, Guillem.
I'm debated between genius and unique. What we've seen here is something that we haven't seen before, and we won't be able to see before. So the word genius is used far too often, but I think what we got here is somebody that a little bit of the perfect storm, as I was saying earlier, but he got all the characteristics of somebody who's making history as as he goes along. Genius.
Okay.
Semra,
like
it's a very difficult question, so I go for magic. Magic because it can make things happen. And I remember trying to get the ball off him, and he made the ball disappear. So I thought that was a trick. So I'll just describe him as magic. It could do anything out of nowhere, and it's just a wizard. So that's my word for Leo.
Great. Well, the good news, as I'm sure many of you have already seen by now, as of a few hours ago, we will all be able to see the magical genius on the pitch once again very soon, because the Spanish government has actually given the green light to La Liga and to football to make its return anytime after June 8th. So in just about 3-4 weeks, we'll be able to watch Messi and friends and company back in action on the pitch. So I, for one, am very excited. I'm sure all of you are as well. So just before we say goodbye, remind us where we can all find the two of you on social media, how people can follow you, how people can chat with you, interact with you, all that sort of thing, where they can see you. Andrea, I know you're very busy on social media.
I know you've been
remind us where we can find you.
Well, I know you've been trying to get me into Twitter, and you haven't managed to do so yet. So I'm on Instagram. Andrea Orlandi S, and that's my account, and you can find me there.
Great. Well, the campaign is still on to get you on Twitter, so we'll keep trying. And your first tweet is gonna be that photo of you
with Messi. I'll send you the photo later. It's quite embarrassing.
Okay, Guillem, what about you? Where can people follow you, find you, interact with you?
I'm everywhere.
You're everywhere.
I'm on Instagram. I've got a new podcast coming on, which is we've done 2 series of it, the Pure Football Podcast. I'm on YouTube channel, Facebook, everywhere. So difficult to miss me. I'll be especially very active on Twitter, obviously, and the podcast lately, and the YouTube channel.
Great. And you guys both forgot LaLiga TV, obviously.
Yes.
Yeah, of course. Of course. And we're all looking forward to it, because you said the good news, so we're very happy with it as well, of course.
Uh-huh.
Believe me too indeed. So thank you both very much. It's been such a wonderful hour talking to both of you and talking about the wonderful Argentine that is Lionel Messi. And thank you to all of you as well for being with us here. And we hope you've enjoyed the chats, and we'll see you all very soon. Adios.
Bye.